We hope you enjoy this free clip of aggressive progressives on the Young Turks. If you want to see more aggressive progressives, become a member today by going to tyt.com/join.
Joining us now on Aggressive Progressives, former Young Turks reporter Nomiki Konst with an exciting exclusive. Nomiki, welcome back.
Hello, old friend.
How you doing, sister?
I'm doing great. It's a little rainy and cold today. I think we're done with summer, but otherwise, it's election season. You can feel it in the air.
Yeah, indeed. Which leads us to my first question. Nomiki, I hear you might have some exciting news for us. What would that be?
I do. And thank you for giving me this space. You may have been paying attention to New York politics in the last few months. There's been a lot of drama and unexpected turns and wins. We saw in the primary just a couple of weeks ago that current public advocate of New York City won the Democratic primary for Attorney General of New York. And it was a hard-fought win. And it is likely that she will be winning in the general. This is a complicated situation, but I am running to be the next public advocate of New York City.
Okay, so a number of questions. Since the current public advocate is going to another office, or certainly running for one.
Yes.
Yes. So what happens to this seat and this race? Is the election in November? How does it work?
So right now, the next election for public advocate is for 2021. Of course, Letitia James, the current public advocate, has to win in the fall against a Republican. The chances are extraordinarily high that she will win. Then you'll have the mayor call the special election, which could be any time from the date that he announces that special election within 45 days. So you'll likely see that election in the winter, late winter, maybe early spring of next year. So from now until then, and maybe beyond, I am running for New York City public advocate, to be the next New York City public advocate.
So likely that election, it sounds like, will happen in about 3 to 6 months or so. So there's actually not much time, and that makes sense that you would announce now. So for those of us not from New York, what in the world does a public advocate do?
Right. Well, surprisingly, as I've been talking to people and making phone calls, even some of the most astute political forces and activists here in New York City don't really understand what the public advocate does. And that's partially because the office is a little bit confusing. It was designed after a charter commission. We're getting a little wonky here. 1989, it was set up as a separate position to really represent the public more, to be a watchdog for the city, to be able to investigate, to in some cases be able to sue different agencies through outside counsel. The way that I look at it and that I interpret it is part investigative reporter, it's part watchdog, and it's a little bit ombudsman. That's not the sexiest term, but we all know what an ombudsman is. They're there to be representing the public, to put a check and balance on the city government, and possibly even highlight some things that are happening in the state government when it affects the city.
There's just so much agreement here because, first of all, ombudsman, disastrous word.
I know,
agreed.
But there's no other word. Look, trust me.
No, I get it. And hey, given that you were an investigative reporter who did watchdog journalism, it makes sense that you would check the government in other ways, including from within. So do you have a sense of the different areas that you might look into, or is that something that you would do once you get into office?
The way that I plan on campaigning is doing whatever I can in my power to highlight areas of the New York City government that have been mismanaged, have been ignored. I, as you know very well, Jane, because we've had many conversations about this, I see conflicts of interest everywhere and I smell them out. And oftentimes conflicts of interest in government and political institutions can lead to a corruption that affects everyday working people's lives. And I don't think that we're spending enough time on that. You see, local reporting has really suffered the effects of the economy, over the last 10 or so years. And with those two things happening simultaneously in New York City, a lot of corruption is not being exposed. So I will definitely bring my journalistic skills to the campaign along the way to help, frankly, separate myself from the pack because it will be a very crowded field, likely. But I'm also planning on doing that within the public advocate's role. There is a budget to do a lot. It's what you do with the budget. The first public advocate, Mark Green, who is a consumer advocate, he has nobly said that this office is really what the person decides to do with it. And in a lot of cases, people use it as a stepping stone, or in our government here locally, there's several folks that are termed out. And they're looking for their next option and opportunity, and that's great, and that's really what campaigns and these vibrant campaigns in New York City are about. I think I offer something unique, and I plan to bring that along the campaign trail as well.
Yeah, so if you wind up winning, by the way, there'll probably be no bigger group of political office holders that I've ever worked with, because I worked with Mark Green at Air America, so I don't know, maybe it's a trend. But in your case, you ran for office in Arizona back in 2012 for a congressional seat, and you worked as a reporter, you worked as a talk show host, and really well known in progressive circles as a progressive champion. So how do you position yourself versus the other folks that'll be running who are more imagined to be more politically, well, classic politicians, for lack of a better way of putting it? Do you think it's a politician that might know the office better in a lot of ways, and they'll argue they know the system better, or better to have an outsider?
I think for this position in particular, it is set up to be somebody who is an independent, who can put a check on the city council, who can put a check on the mayor's office and other agencies, who can push for the public's agenda. I don't really see anybody more qualified to do that right now than myself. I did that whether it was on the commission, I was appointed by Bernie Sanders to do that with the Democratic Party. I mean, I'm not a DNC member, but I was on the commission there to check the Democratic Party. And I think, I think I did a decent job doing so. We didn't get all the things that we wanted, but we got pretty far and more reform than I think the party has seen ever. I plan to do the same thing with the public advocate's position. There's a lot of integration between the political machinery, the machinations in New York City politics, and the actual offices, because this is a Democratic city for the most part, with exception for a few districts in Staten Island and a sliver of Brooklyn. For the most part, this is a city that is controlled by Democratic politicians. And so you'll see a lot of folks who are presenting themselves as the most progressive. I don't think there's going to be much question about my progressive values and the issues that I represent. I am a DSA member. I am a card-carrying member who's been to the conventions. I was there reporting for the Young Turks. I mean, you know many of the stories that I covered for the Young Turks were the early days of the new DSA, I wouldn't say new, but the growing DSA after Bernie got elected.
Yep.
I don't think anybody else really has that right now. They're great progressives in the city council, but this is a position that really should be independent. And they might understand the city council more because they've been there, but the public advocate's position has only been held by 4 people. And I think they know the position more than anybody else.
Yeah, and you could argue that you helped to clean up New York politics from the outside earlier in your coverage of it, and now you'd be able to do it from the inside.
We hope you enjoyed this free clip from the Young Turks. If you want to see more aggressive progressives with exclusive content, all while supporting independent media, become a member today by going to tyt.com/join. In the meantime, enjoy this free clip of aggressive progressives.